Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. All the things. We are in 2026, baby. And welcome back to season 2 of the Suffering for Art podcast. Yes, you heard that right. Season 2. I'm very excited. My name is Brianna Kaleen, and I am the host of Suffering for Art. This is a podcast where we talk about the highs and the lows of the everyday creative human through the lens of finances, mental health, and relationships. But what does that actually mean? It means that we take a deep dive into the struggles that creatives face every single day because financially, most of us are struggling. Mentally, most of us are struggling. And relationally, I think I could probably say 75% of us are indeed struggling. And this podcast was made to be a resource for creatives because when I was looking for something like this, I couldn't find it. And so I decided to make it myself to bring on experts to help creatives thrive in their everyday life and in their creative life. So, welcome back to the podcast. We're in season 2. I have one announcement before we get started on this episode. At the end of 2026, we are having the Artist Recharge Retreat. This is a retreat in upstate New York designed for 7 artists to get away and recharge emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically, in order to give themselves more energy in the future. This is a 3-night retreat. There will be food, there will be lodging. It's in this gorgeous place with a ton of places to hike and kayak, have massages, yoga. But the coolest thing, in my opinion, is that there will be 3 sessions where we talk about mental health, how you operate as a creative, and then we create without any kind of restriction. We're having some expert guests come, and if this is something you're interested in, I would encourage you to apply. It's in the link in the description box, but also follow our social media pages because some really cool stuff is coming out this year. Okay, with all of that being said, let's get into this episode. A flow state, or being in the zone, is one of those experiences that almost every creative has felt, even if we didn't have a name for it. It's when you feel so completely absorbed in what you're doing that the world around you fades out. Have you ever been working on a project, painting, editing, writing, and you look up and suddenly you've missed lunch? Hours have passed and you didn't even notice? That's actually one of the first indicators that you were in a flow state. You lose track of time, your inner critic quiets down, your focus feels effortless, and everything just clicks. Psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi coined the term flow. He described it as a state of optimal experience, a balance where the challenge of a task perfectly meets your level of skill. You're fully engaged and everything outside of the moment dissolves. He once wrote that flow is being completely involved in an activity for its own sake. The ego falls away, time flies, every action and movement and thought follows inevitably from the previous one, like playing jazz. Your whole being is involved and you're using your skill to the utmost. Can you imagine sitting down to create and suddenly the energy just flows? You don't have to fight it or locate it or overthink it, you just do. I know I crave those moments, the ones where creativity feels natural, spiritual, even. So, in this episode, we're going to talk about how to enter a flow state, what it looks like, why it's so beneficial for creatives, how to rewire your brain to focus deeply, even when the world around you is designed to pull you away. So, a flow state comes from an effortless place, and yet it takes so much work to access these days, at least in my experience. That's because flow requires deep focus, and deep focus used to be a much more common skill. Cal Newport, who wrote the book Deep Work, defines it as professional activities performed in a state of distraction free concentration that push your cognitive capabilities to their limit. These efforts create new value, improve your skill, and are hard to replicate. Now, stick with me for a second. What most of us do on the day to day isn't deep work, it's what Cal Newport actually calls shallow work. These are the non cognitively demanding logistical tasks that we do while distracted, the things that don't create much new value and are easy to replicate. Think of it like this: writing an email is shallow work, while learning the piano is deep work. Most of us, once we graduate high school or college, we don't do things that push us or push our brains to learn something new. We get tossed into jobs where we're flipping burgers, we're sending emails, or filling out a form, and that's the hardest thing we do for the day. And in between sending those emails, we are checking our phones. We're doom scrolling. We're bouncing from one distraction to the next. Now, why does that matter? Because when your brain is learning a new skill or even maintaining one you already know, like playing the piano, it is in deep work mode. And during deep work, your brain is producing something called myelin. Myelin is a fatty tissue that wraps around neurons. Basically, insulation that allows those neurons to fire faster, cleaner, and stronger. The more you focus, the more myelin you build, and the more that skill becomes cemented in your brain. But when you're constantly bouncing from piano to phone to texting to cooking to doing laundry to back to piano, your neurons are firing inconsistently. They're firing in different areas to be able to do all of those skills, which means you're producing much less myelin, which means you're learning and retaining less. I know that was a lot of science talk, but here's the simple version. When you focus on a bunch of things at once, your brain literally learns slower. Now, imagine if you were doing a lot of deep work tasks. Say you are learning the piano while you're learning a new language, and something else that seems like deep work to you. Your brain is having to focus very, very hard, and the neurons are having to fire very, very hard to learn that new skill. But if you were splitting your time and you were distracted trying to learn all of those things at once, the neurons are firing slower, but you are developing something new. So your brain is working a little bit harder still. What's even crazier is most of us, like I said, aren't doing deep work, we're doing shallow work. So not only is our brain not actively working as hard, but we are interrupting that brain that is working less hard on that shallow work with distractions that are also making our brain work less and less. We're living in a cycle of shallow work. So not only are we distracted, but our brains are barely building new connections at all. Our attention spans are shrinking, our creativity is getting thinner, and let's be real, we're slowly becoming dumber. And I don't say that to shame us. I say that because I felt it. That dullness that creeps in when you haven't learned something new in a while, that frustration of wanting to create something but not being able to get there, that's the cost of a distracted mind. I actually recently found myself buffering, literally buffering. Like my brain would just stop after about a minute of talking. I couldn't seem to hold a single train of thought for longer than that. And then it hit me, I was functioning in TikTok time. I've spent years watching short film videos where someone explains something in like 60 seconds, and then I swipe to the next topic, and then the next, and then the next, and then the next. And without realizing it, I was literally training my brain to learn and think in 1 minute increments. My attention span wasn't broken, it was conditioned. And at first, I thought I was being dramatic, but the more I researched it and researched how to rebuild my focus, the more I realized I wasn't crazy. That discovery led me straight to the concept of the flow state and to Cal Newport's book, Deep Work. Now, I get it, all of this can kind of sound dramatic and kind of depressing. Like, great, the world keeps distracting me, I'm getting dumber by the day, and there's nothing I can do. But here's the thing, that's not true. The coolest thing about the human brain is that it can literally rewire itself. Neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new connections, to adapt, to strengthen whatever pathways you use most. So, yes, you have been training your brain to crave quick hits of information, but that also means you can train it back. The thing you're competing with isn't your intelligence per se, it's the world's design. A world that profits from your distraction, and a world that makes deep thinking feel like swimming upstream. So, how can we actually retrain our brain in an increasingly distracting world? That's what we're getting into next. I don't think we as a people group have lost our creativity, though I think creativity has stalled. We are human beings, and human beings are inherently creative. I think we have lost the ability to sit with our creativity. We've slowly, our world has slowly evolved into one that doesn't just distract us, but it rewards that distraction. Every app, every notification, every scroll is designed to keep us from stillness, to keep us checking, refreshing, consuming, and not creating. And we've gotten used to it. We've trained our brains to crave short bursts of dopamine, those tiny hits of pleasure when someone likes a post, when a video loops perfectly, when we find that next thing to swipe to. But also, like I said, the world is built to distract you. The platforms we use every day, they were literally built for us to keep using them, to be addicted to them. For example, Sean Parker, the founding president of Facebook, has openly said that when Facebook began, the goal was to consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible. He even admitted that features like the like button were created to tap into the same dopamine reward loops our brains use for pleasure and addiction. And tech reporters, along with the creators of The Social Dilemma, have confirmed it. Platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube were designed to maximize engagement and keep you scrolling. Because the longer you stay, the more data they collect and the more ads they can sell around your attention. These platforms were literally engineered to keep you addicted. Studies show that the average attention span has dropped by almost 50% since the early 2000s, from about 2.5 minutes on a single task to less than 47 seconds before switching to something else. And it's not just our attention spans that's shrinking, our mental health is also paying the price. Rates of anxiety, depression, and suicide have skyrocketed since the rise of social media. According to the CDC, suicide rates among people averaged 10 to 24 have increased by nearly 60% in the last 2 decades. And the US Surgeon General found that teens who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media are twice as likely to report poor mental health, including anxiety, hopelessness, and isolation. Now, that doesn't mean our phones are inherently evil. It means our brains were never built to handle this much noise, this much novelty, and this much of everything. I always say that my phone carries worlds. I can literally open my phone and have access to anyone I've known ever. I do not think we were supposed to be able to do that. The average person now spends 5 to 6 hours on their phone every day. That's 9 years of your life spent looking at a screen. 9 years of teaching your brain to operate at a slower, more distracted pace. And here's why that matters. It's nearly impossible to reach a flow state, that place of deep, effortless creation, when you never challenge your skills long enough to grow them. You can't create at your highest potential when your attention is constantly fragmented. You can't get into flow if your brain is always waiting for the next notification. So, it really is that damn phone. I've seen that everywhere. I think it's really funny, but it is true. I do think there are other practices we can weave into our lives to help us live a deep, work filled life. I always think it's really important to go back to history and see what others have done before us successfully. And one thing that people did before algorithms and before instant entertainment was learning to sit with their work for a very long time, for hours, for days, for years. They knew real art didn't come from rushing. It came from wrestling, from staying with something long enough to see what it wanted to become. One of my favorite examples of this kind of creative patience is the legendary R&B and neo soul artist D'Angelo. He actually recently passed away in 2025 at the age of 51 after battling cancer. But he wasn't just a singer. A lot of people, especially in the R&B space, will say he was a pioneer, a soul architect, if you will, a man who blended R&B, jazz, funk, and gospel in ways that reshaped modern music forever. His albums Brown Sugar in 1995 and Black Messiah in 2014 weren't churned out overnight. They were crafted layer by layer. Producers and collaborators who worked with him would talk about those studio sessions and how they'd sit for hours just listening. If a new drum line came to him, they'd add it. If something felt off, they'd strip it away. They'd find new grooves, discover new rhythms, and sometimes just sit in silence until the music told them what to do next. That process of deep engagement is the embodiment of flow. Not rushed, not shallow, just deeply present. And that's what allowed his music to breathe, to evolve, and to live. What D'Angelo tapped into is what the psychologist Mihai and what Cal Newport in Deep Work both talk about. That stillness, to reach the flow state, to be able to work on something with deep intention, you have to learn how to sit in solitude and to sit with time. So, Mihai, the psychologist who actually made flow state, gives it 9 characteristics. And I'm going to read them off to you. And then I'm going to tell you how you can set up your creative session to make sure these things are actually present in them to help you with a flow state. You have to have clear goals, immediate feedback, a balance between challenge and skill, concentration, merging of action and awareness, loss of self consciousness, sense of control, transformation of time, having a rewarding and deep immersion, and peak performance. So, how can we actually set up our creative workspace to have these things in mind to help us to create an environment to help us achieve the flow state? We already talked about limiting distractions, but I will get back to that with the phone. Yes. But first, I do think it's really important to go into your creative sessions with a clear goal. If you're going in just to fiddle around, I think that can be fun if your goal is to fiddle around. If your goal is to write a crappy song, then go in and write a crappy song. I think having a clear goal allows your brain to know when it's hit success, to know it's on the right path, and to know how to work backwards from that goal when you're sitting down for a session. You want to have immediate feedback, not a criticism, but let's say you haven't rhymed at all in the song and you really like to structure your songs with a rhyme. The feedback would be, oh, I haven't rhymed yet. Let's rhyme. Immediate feedback for yourself is important in your session because you can always go to another level once you have feedback. A balance between challenge and skill. I think this one is really important. Sitting down and actually challenging yourself is very important. If you're going in and playing the same song you've played for the last 10 years and not changing the challenge, you might not hit a flow state because you're not balancing your skill set and the challenge of the flow. I think that, let's say you're doing that song that you've been playing for 10 years. Maybe the goal is to create, let's say you've done it in an R&B style, then maybe the goal is to turn it into a jazz standard, right? So it's a clear goal and it's something that'll actually challenge your skill set. Concentration is a big one. I talked about the distraction of phones, but there are other distractions. Let's say you have to go to a gig at 5 p.m. and it's 2 o'clock. It can be very difficult to concentrate when you know, oh my gosh, I have to leave in 3 hours and maybe I won't know when the 3 hours, right? So set a timer on your phone. Make sure you clear space within your day, maybe 2 hours at night when you know you're not going anywhere, maybe on the weekend. Like, actually make sure your brain can be distraction free aside from your phone because there are other distractions. Eat before the creativity. Maybe you're a snacker, bring the snacks in. Like, allow yourself to kind of be trapped in a room, like without distractions of any kind. This will allow you, when you're kind of trapped in a room with no needs, maybe going to the restroom is a need, but when you're able to be trapped in a room without somebody bothering you, without needing to eat, without needing to go somewhere else, you can actually have that loss of self consciousness, that sense of control because you know everything is working out in this safe environment that you have, and that transformation of time where you look up and you're like, whoa, how did 5 hours fly by? It happens when you can actually set yourself up for that to happen. So you can't have 5 hours of flow state if you have to go to an event in 2 hours. So make sure you clear your schedule, okay? When you do this, you won't just be making art, you will be actively training your brain to focus again. You're building the mental muscle that makes flow possible. Creativity doesn't come from chaos, it actually comes from concentration. I think a lot of people feel like they need to feel that creative energy to be able to sit down and create, but you'll find when you make a practice of creativity and you set that space up to be in a place where the energy flows, you don't need to have the energy to create. The energy will find you while you're creating. I like to think of creativity as a muscle that you have to flex and engage, even when you don't feel like it, to allow for that energy to flow more and more and more. You can get into a flow state when it's a rhythm that you're in instead of just like once every 2 months, oh, I feel creative. Let me sit down and try to create. I think it's better to maybe sit down for 10 minutes a day and try to create, or an hour a day. And they're practices, so they take time. Retraining your brain to operate in a healthier, more focused way doesn't happen overnight. It's like strengthening a muscle, like I said, and you do have to work on it. You have to rest it. You have to give it grace. So when everything doesn't shift the first time you sit down to do a flow state session, don't give up. Don't assume it isn't working. You're literally rewiring your brain. You're teaching it how to crave stillness again after who knows how long of being distracted in this world and doom scrolling on your phone. Maybe this week, the challenge you can give yourself is to spend the same amount of time in a creative solitude as you do scrolling. If you scroll for 2 hours, you give yourself 2 hours for your craft. You lock in, you slow down, and see what happens when you choose stillness over simulation, presence over pressure. Your creativity was never gone. It's just been waiting for you to sit long enough to find it again. And I would really encourage you to do so because I think the world is really lacking new creative thinking. And I think that's because so many people are distracted and unable to sit in stillness again. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If this helped you in any way, please follow us, like it, share, comment. You help us keep going. Once again, I'm so excited for the season 2 of this podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. Every single one of you. We've had thousands of people listen from over 12 countries, which is so cool. If you are a listener of Suffering for Art and you deeply resonate with the message of Suffering for Art and want to lend your services in any way, whether that's design, it's editing, whether it's social media, I would love to partner with you. Please email me. My email is in the description box of this episode. You can also comment on it. I would encourage you to apply for the Artist Recharge Retreat. The application is also in the description box of this episode. As always, I am so happy to learn with you. I'm so happy to grow with you, and I will see you again on the next episode of Suffering for Art.